How's it going, guys? Casey here with the Coyote Works channel. Well, I just pulled out of Riley and I talked to the gal that runs the store there, and she said there's flash flood warnings and thunder shower warnings in effect for the next 2 days. So I'll have to pay attention, make sure I don't camp in the bottom of a dry wash or something, but we might get some cool weather on this trip. So a little tip for any of you guys that do get out here overlanding in this part of the country, there is gas in Riley, but the last time I checked, there was no gas in Brothers or Hampton. So when you leave Bend going east on Highway 20, Riley is the first gas stop. Riley is also the last gas stop if you turn right on Highway 95 and head south on 395. Riley is the last gas stop until you get to Valley Falls. Alright, I am off the pavement, and looks like these thunderheads are continuing to build up here, and I'm just starting to get a first couple of drops of rain hitting my windshield. So I'm going to go about 8 or 10 miles or so on this pretty well maintained, fairly major gravel road, and then I'm going to turn off to the east. But it looks like I'm heading into the storm here, so if it's not raining real hard, I'm going to make a little stop up here and clean off my windshield a little bit. There's a little corral up here I'm going to pull over at. So I'm heading out into some new country out there, but it looks like there's thunderheads building pretty much all around me. So there's just a few drops of rain starting to come down now. And it's interesting, I see the ground's a little damp in places out here, so it must have been getting a decent amount of rains. So what I've got in store for us on this trip is I've got about a half a dozen historic sites that I want to find. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be following the route of, it was one of the old main routes that goes back and forth in between. It actually crossed, probably 120 miles of this country, and I'm going to be following a part of it, and it connected a series of communities and a series of ranches. Right now I'm heading down Hogback Road, so some of you that are more astute out there can probably figure out where Hogback Road is off of 395. I'm going to head down Hogback a ways, and then I'll turn off to the east, and I'll be on kind of secondary roads. This little bit of rain's kind of nice because it's keeping the dust down, which is a welcome reprieve out in this country. So just to give you guys an idea of how far I am out here, so I've drove 172 miles from my house on pavement, on kind of secondary highways, and I'll probably end up, this loop will probably be about 80 miles-ish or so off pavement. And then I'll make a big loop and I'll come back out on the pavement up near the town of Riley. I don't really know the roads through there, so I'm not 100% sure exactly where I'll come out, but I'm just going to try to find a route through here. I did a little bit of research, and there was actually a good number of kind of homestead era settlements out here. A good number of homesteads. Now, this is really harsh country down here, so they were scattered few and far between, and they were concentrated around where the resources were. God, it looks like they've got some water out in this country. This road is muddy. Let's see what we got over there. So I'm kind of looking for traces of the old road. I should cross it at some point on this road that I'm on. But that reminds me, you know, one of the most underrated pieces of overlanding gear I think out there are a good pair of binoculars. I feel like it's something a lot of guys just don't think to throw in their gear, but man, it's such a huge help, and even just a really nice luxury if you see some wildlife, some antelope, something like that. But having a good pair of binoculars in the rig with you, in my book, is absolutely critical. Alright, I got a lot of miles on these pretty bumpy roads, so I'm going to go ahead and air down, and I'm going to air down to about 32 psi. I don't really need traction. I just want to soften my ride just a little bit, take some of the shock out of all these little tiny bumps on this road. So I'm using this ARB tire deflator. It works pretty good. that softened up the ride a little bit. So I've got about, probably 5 or 6 more miles down this road before I turn off it onto some more secondary roads. And right around that 5-6 mile mark will be the first spot where I think there might be a potential homestead. So we'll do some looking around and see what we can find there. All right, we got a little bit of water running down the road here. I don't think it should be a problem. Boy, I really was not anticipating this much mud and this much water out here. These rains that they've been getting in the afternoon must have been really dumping some water. I was talking to the lady at the Riley store, and she said they've been getting some pretty serious thunder showers every afternoon, and that the area is under flash flood warnings. But this is crazy this time of year to have this much water and mud out here. Like, there's places when I can just see it standing out in the fields, and honestly, it's going to make it a bit problematic, and it might even prevent me from getting where I was hoping to go on this trip. All right, this one looks like it could be a deep one. Get up a little momentum. This is just amazing area out here. Wide open, and I don't think that this is a fairly decent road that I'm on, but I don't think anybody's been traveling it this year. I don't see any sign of any tracks, not even any tracks in the mud or anything like this. So I think I'm probably, getting to be quite a few miles beyond the reach of the average person at this point, which makes me a happy boy. And well, I'm walking around this spot here, and I was looking for a sign of an old homestead. I found a couple of old pieces of metal, but nothing really conclusive. But what I did find is, I'm on the side of this lake bed here, and what I did find is a few obsidian chips. So I know the Native Americans were here at one point, but that thunder is rumbling off in the distance. The wind's at my back, so the storm's coming towards me. So I'm going to start working my way north, and I'm going to have to try to find someplace with a little bit of cover to camp tonight. All right, well, I'm striking out so far on finding any super cool historic sites, but it's around 6 o'clock. It's actually about 10 minutes till 6. And up ahead of me, I got a big butte. And it looks like there's quite a few juniper trees growing off of the side of it. So I'm going to try to make it up into that butte and see if I can find me a spot to camp. I'd like to get into camp just a little bit early tonight for once in my life. So we'll see if that actually happens. I've got one more potential historic site that I'm going to try to make before camp, and I think, just looking at the terrain around me, that I think there's a possibility that I might be able to camp somewhat near it. Wow, guys, I'm pushing it for dark and finding a spot to camp, but I just saw this really neat little canyon that I wanted to take a little hike up, and it's just very interesting, the rock formations in here. It's just such a beautiful time of year with all the wildflowers and everything. This is just a short window in time when it looks like this out here. In another couple weeks of warm weather, this will be dry and turning yellow and really just a harsh environment, but right now it's just lush and green and beautiful. All right, so I got to be kind of careful in here because of the rattlesnakes, but right down here in front of me, I've got just this beautiful little pool that collects water. And then those rocks up behind me, they're slightly overhung, and there might have even been a cave back in there at one time. We're going to go up and take a look at it, but those rocks are blackened by fire. So at some point in the past, people camped up underneath those rocks and built fires underneath them. Look at this, just a little bit of a rock shelter behind me. Would have been just enough for a couple of the ancient ones out here to bed down back up in there, set up a cooking fire. Yeah, I don't ever dig or anything, but I bet it'd be pretty amazing what you could find if you sifted around the dirt on the floor of this thing. It looked like there was another level of it up there, so I'm gonna hike up and check it out a little bit too. Years and years worth of a fire right there. Somebody's cooking fire blackened that wall. Yeah, look at this. That's a crude scraper. So they were definitely in here. All right, well, after that little walk, now it's 7, so that gives me about an hour and a half left of light, and I'm looking over there and I'm hoping that I'm just about a quarter of a mile from the spot where I wanted to check out and see if there was another piece of old history, number 1, and number 2, that I might be able to camp. All right, so it's definitely not the most epic camp spot I've ever had, but there's wood here, a flat spot, and it's along the route of where I want to go tomorrow, and there are a couple of historic sites here that we can check out in the morning. Well, one maybe not so historic, but definitely pretty interesting. So let's get camp set up and get some dinner. All right, the ticks and the mosquitoes are out in force. I've already pulled one tick off me. So I'm gonna get a fire going. That smoke will kind of keep the area right around my camp clear. But first, I'm gonna build a little bit of a fire reflective wall here. I always like to have that just to kind of keep the wind off of the fire, and it helps me control the smoke. This time of year I don't really need the heat from the fire, it's just to cook off of, and the smoke is nice because it helps keep the insects away. There we go, that'll work. Now I'm going to get a little fire going so I can be burning while I'm setting up the rest of my camp. Alright, let's see if we can get this fire started with this bundle. So one piece of gear that's really handy, especially for the rooftop tent where I want everything compact, is this Climate inflatable pillow. And this thing's really comfortable. All right, and that's that. My bed is all set up. It takes me about 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes if I mess around with my bedding a little bit. So one thing I did is I set up my camp on a little piece of high ground right here. It doesn't look like any of these storms are going to hit me, but you never know. I've got a decent little view. I can see a big area around me. It's not the most epic spot I've ever camped in, but it's got everything I need. All right, guys, I am getting hungry, so I've got a nice chef-level meal prepared for this evening, or that I'm going to prepare. So tonight's menu is going to be a gorgonzola and bacon stuffed burger served on an egg onion bun with jalapeno ketchup, a little bit of mayonnaise, some wilted spinach, and some fresh organic tomato. So we're just going to make a really solid, delicious burger, and it's going to be really easy. The ingredients are really simple. I've got some chopped bacon, some gorgonzola cheese, some fresh spinach, some fresh sliced organic tomatoes. Here I've got the jalapeno ketchup, and here I've got the onion egg buns, and then inside this container I've got 2 burger patties. So you guys are going to see this is going to make a delicious meal, and it's only going to take me a couple of minutes to make it. Alright, so I've got my pie irons just a little bit warm. I'm just going to kind of form a burger patty in each one. Now the second one, since the burgers are round, I'm just kind of pressing them into the corner a little bit. Alright, now on one side, I'm just going to press in some gorgonzola. And then sprinkle in the bacon. Then we'll do just a little bit more of the gorgonzola on top in the bacon. Alright, now we'll close this up. Stick this in the fire. I'm going to let it go about 1 minute on one side, then 1 minute on the other side. And then I'm going to pull it out of the coals and let it sit and cook for a minute or two, and then I'll put it back in for another minute or two. Right, and while the burger's cooking, I'm going to prepare my bun. Some coyotes going off in the distance. A little bit of mayonnaise. Bushcrafted me up a nice butter knife. I'll put a little bit of spinach on there, and then when I set that hot burger on the spinach, it'll wilt it just a little bit and make it nice and soft. Throw a nice thick slice of organic tomato on there. Alright, now that is going to be the bomb. Have me a little salad. Got another minute or two and that burger should be done. Alright, guys. Look at that. See how it looks. So there you have it. The bacon and gorgonzola stuffed burger with wilted spinach and organic tomatoes, a little bit of mayonnaise, and a little bit of spicy jalapeno ketchup. Alright, my beverage of choice tonight is Blue Monkey coconut water. Man, that is incredible. That is one amazing burger, guys. Man, I know I say this a lot, but this is just what it's all about. Coming out here, doing some exploring, having an amazing meal. Well, guys, I have to say that burger was amazing. This is always such a nice time out here, as after all the chores are done, a nice full belly in front of a campfire. But one of the things that I really appreciate about being out in a lot of these places that I go is absolutely no noise, no light pollution, no, as far as I can see, there's not one artificial light that's not coming from my camp. And there's probably not another person within probably at least 25 miles of me. I haven't seen another person since I left the pavement, and I've driven almost 40 miles since I left the pavement. Pretty much have all my camp buttoned up. I'm just going to finish my coconut water and enjoy the campfire and listen to the sounds of the night out here. So tomorrow I've got about, oh geez, probably 40 or 50 miles of off-road, and I have no idea what condition the roads are in. They're just trails that I found on the old USGS maps that roughly follow the route of that old wagon road. So I'm going to be following that, and we'll see what tomorrow brings. But I think I'm going to crawl up into the tent, catch a little sleep. The fire's burning down. It's been a good day today. My belly's full, and I'm ready for a nap. Alright, I think it's going to be really warm tonight. I didn't even bring my heater up on my tent because I just don't think I'm going to need it. Got my trusty Glock 34. Chamber is clear. I think I'm going to have a pretty comfortable night tonight. There's no breeze out there. Hopefully the wind won't pick up, but I'm right down at the base of this kind of a ridge over here, and that ridge is the direction that the wind is coming from. So hopefully that ridge will give me just a little bit of protection if the wind does pick up tonight. I'll probably wake up whenever I wake up, which is usually fairly early out here, and then I'll just do a quick breakfast, break camp, and get on the road because we've got a lot of miles to cover tomorrow and a lot of places I want to make sure I have plenty of time to explore. So for now, Coyote Works out. I'll see you guys in the morning for coffee. Wow, good morning guys. Man, there is not a cloud in the sky this morning. Actually, that's not true. There's a few wispy white ones over there. But it is just a beautiful morning. It's about 20 minutes after 6. The sun's already rising over there. The grass is covered with dew. The birds are singing. It's just amazing out here. Not the most amazing campsite I've ever had, but still pretty epic waking up out here in the morning. My light pod's back on the charger. Get this thing turned around facing the sun so it starts charging up this morning. First things first, I'm going to get some water going for some coffee. I went ahead and started a little fire just to keep the mosquitoes down. Once the heat of the day hits, probably within the next hour or so, the mosquitoes will be gone. But for now, while it's still a little bit cool in the morning and there's a lot of dew in the grass, they're out. So I'm just enjoying my cup of coffee. This morning what I'm going to have for breakfast is a couple of Mountain House meals. I don't want to spend a lot of time in camp, so that's just a quick breakfast. But one thing I like to do to make it a little bit special is I take the scrambled eggs, I make a packet of the scrambled eggs, and I make it a packet of the biscuits and gravy, and then I put the two together. So I have eggs and biscuits and gravy. So that just adds a little bit of protein to the biscuits and gravy breakfast. By the way, the Mountain House biscuits and gravy meal is actually some pretty darn good biscuits and gravy. The scrambled eggs, not so much, but they are protein and they do help fill the void. Alright, let's see how our breakfast is coming out. Alright, so it's not an amazing breakfast sandwich made in the pie iron, but it is a breakfast that'll fill the void, keep my stomach full, and give me some energy for the next couple hours. So I'm going to go ahead and dump some extra gas in the Jeep now for a couple of reasons. One, I can get that weight off of my gas can mount in the back, and it just rides better when it's in the tank. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to need every drop of fuel I've got before I get out of here. Nice things about these Rotopax cans is so far I've never had one leak. And that's pretty impressive because all my life I've dealt with a lot of different gas cans, and almost all of the different ones I've worked with have leaked. So I know there's other ones besides the Rotopax cans that don't leak, but these have just been really dependable. You don't need to really crank down the caps to keep them from leaking. They're one of the, well, they're actually so far the only can that I trust to put inside my Jeep. So I'm just getting my kitchen stuff packed up here real quick. But this little Optimus Crux stove has just been perfect. It's just a little single burner butane stove, and this is the entire thing with the butane canister. So it uses up hardly any room in my kit, and almost everything that I do out here I can do with one burner, and this is about the most compact one burner style stove that I've come up with. Now sometimes it is nice to throw in a 2-burner stove, but that is a little bit bigger and it's quite a bit heavier, so it adds more bulk and more weight to your loadout. 90% of the time this little guy is just perfect for me. Alright, I'm going to fire off a few rounds real quick because usually in the mornings I do dry practice. But when I'm out here like this, there's no reason to do dry practice. I'll do some live practice. The last class I went through, and I'm going to have some video up on that. Contact front. I went up to Coyote Works outside of Portland, and I trained with James Markham of Mayhem Syndicate. So today is really the first kind of actual firing practice I've done since then, so we'll see how this goes. Alright, it's about 10 o'clock, so as you guys can see I didn't really get out of camp early, but I did a little shooting and took my time this morning. It's just such a beautiful morning. But now I'm going to get on the road, and we've got about, I'm going to say about 5 miles or so until the next historic site. Alright, the first stop is really close to camp. We're just going to run up here and check out. There's this old bus here, and I'm not really sure why. So we're going to go check it out real quick. Hey, little guy. Hey, what's going on? It's just beautiful. Pretty interesting, the random stuff you find out here in the middle of the desert. So this bus right here, I don't know how it ended up here, but it's a pretty rough road down in here, so it must have been quite the feat to get it here. It's a pretty old one, but it looks like it's been converted to some kind of a living quarters. I can see like a old refrigerator, what looks like an old refrigerator, and some cabinets and things like that. So it looks like it's been converted to camp in or live in. So I don't know if this was some RV from way back in the day, somebody got out here and then it broke down, or if maybe it's some little bit of rancher ingenuity where they utilized a bus to make a little cow camp or sheep camp out of. But anyway, it's pretty interesting. So we're going to head up the road just a little bit and we're going to see if we can find another site. All right, so on a old 1960s map, it shows somewhere right in here is the site of an old cabin. So I'm just going to keep kicking around here and see if I can find evidence of this old trapper's cabin that was in here. Well, it's going to be really hard for you guys to see, but right here where I'm sitting, there's the stone perimeter. What I'm reasonably certain is the foundation of that old cabin. I've got some wire right here, part of an old mattress spring over there, and then a rusty, it looks like a rusty, some kind of a bucket or something. Then right here in the ground, I'm finding some chunks of old iron. So I'm thinking right here was that cabin. From what I read, it was basically an old hermit that lived in it, and I think just sustained himself off of trapping and hunting out here. But man, we are way out in the middle of nowhere. This would have been a tough life right here on this spot. There's a little bit of a spring right back up in that little draw that maybe in wetter years ran more. And then we've got some shelter from these cliffs right here, from these rocks right here. That would have actually broken the wind. The prevailing wind comes from that direction. So it would have been kind of a sheltered spot here, and actually, all things considered, not too bad. Nice view of the valley out there. All right, so the roads aren't bad up here. Well, they're not bad as in I'm not going to make it bad. They're bad as in they're just rocky and faint, and I don't think very many people go on this road every year, and there certainly hasn't been anybody on it this year. So I've got a couple more miles of this, but now I'm up on these high plateaus, and the wildflowers up here are just incredible. And this is such a unique thing in this area up here. Like, this is literally just a couple week period of time when these wildflowers are out like this. It just takes a week or two of hot weather and then they'll all be dried up and gone. But right now, in these first couple of weeks of the spring, when we've been getting some afternoon rain still, they sure are gorgeous. Look at that big old range bull. God, I'm just exploring this awesome little canyon in here, and somewhere in here there's a canyon that's got some pictographs on it that I'm looking for, that an old guy that I work with, well, actually he's not that old, he probably wouldn't be happy if I called him an old guy, but a guy that I work with told me about one of these canyons in here has some pictographs. So I thought I'd come in here and see if I could find it, but so far nothing. But it is a really neat canyon in here. Very cool driving through it. Man, it's tight in here though. I'm scraping sagebrush on both sides. Give me that, what we call out in this country, that desert pinstriping. You get dust on your rig out here, and then you drive through these tight roads where the sagebrush or the juniper trees scrape against your rig, and it makes these pinstripes in the wax coat on your paint. Call it desert pinstriping. All right, so I saw this thing on the map, and it was a mile and a half or so off of the route that I was going on, but it was called Hole in the Ground. But the marking that it had on it was like the marking for a ruins or an old building site. So I'm gonna head out here and see if I can find it. Wow, guys, that is crazy. That's exactly what this is a hole in the ground. It's really just like the collapsed roof of a cave, and it looks like potentially the cave goes back both directions from it. You can't even see it until you get right up next to it. Everything just looks perfectly flat out across here. And then all of a sudden you come up on this thing. God, I can't even imagine how many animals and things have fallen in that over the years, and I would lay odds that the Native Americans used that out here. There's no road to it. It was just this random map marking about, and if you didn't have this old USGS map with the marking on it, like it's not on any newer maps, so it's one of those cool little things that you find with those old maps. Oh yeah, and here's a chunk, here's a couple of chunks of obsidian right here. So the Native Americans definitely used it. Yeah, there's little flakes of obsidian all over the ground here. So the Native Americans definitely did something around this site. I don't know if they sheltered up in there. Would have been a little bit of a climb down in there and out of there, but man, for out here in this wide open country, it would have been some of the best shelter around. All right, off to the next site. The next site is going to be a little homestead. So we've got a couple of miles to get there, and at this rate, these roads are pretty rocky. So I'm just going to concentrate on the driving, and I'll bring you guys back when we get there. All right, well, I arrived at the site of this next homestead, and there's actually quite a bit here, but I'm going to have a little snack. Oh, salami and cheese tray. Well, I found a concentration of cans right in here, but no, I've been kind of gridding back and forth, and I haven't found a root cellar or a foundation, so nothing conclusive. It could have been a really major cow camp, but I just have a feeling there was a homestead here. Alright, so this looks like the barn area over here. Yeah, this was definitely the barn. Yeah, this was definitely a pretty extensive homestead. This thing's been collapsed for probably 5 or 10 years at least, but it was actually a pretty decent size, and for the fact that it had the homestead itself and then a separate barn, a couple of structures, another maybe kind of a carriage shed or something like that over there. And God, this is remote out here. Just freaking incredible that people lived out here and made a life of it. Wow, guys, theoretically this should have been a shortcut, but this road is just like hammered crap. And I've got about 4 or so more miles to go on it. So I am just going along at a crawl. It's not so much that it's questionable whether it's passable or not. It's just there is not a smooth stretch on this entire road. You just don't get a break from it. And I'm rolling along about 5 miles an hour, trying not to beat the heck out of my rig too much. And even at that, it is just a rough son of a gun. Well, I'm now on my last stretch of off-pavement driving. I've got about 5 or 6 miles of this fairly well-traveled, somewhat maintained dirt road, and then I'll be back on pavement. So it looks like on this trip I am sitting at about 289 miles right now, total trip miles so far. I'll have to go back and look, but I think I left the pavement around 170 miles in yesterday, so that means I'm right around 100 off-road miles on this trip. Saw some great new country, again, country I'd never been through before. Had a great meal around camp, really enjoyed the camp spot last night. Few historic spots, and ultimately just really enjoyed getting out of town for a few days. So I've still got a couple hours to drive to get back home, so I'm gonna sign off, guys. Really appreciated having you along on this trip. Always appreciate your support and your comments. Hope you guys enjoyed tagging along on this adventure, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Coyote Works, out.